got 4 cameras with me, 2 cells and 2 regulars. Pretty much know exactly where I'm gonna go. If I have time, I'm gonna push back deeper into the swamp from where I didn't go. Someone's been back here recently. Someone's here right now. I just cut into this brush like maybe 10-15 yards up there. I actually originally went through all of this the first time I scouted this off season back in here. But yeah, I cut through here. Look at this bed right here. This one right there. It's definitely doe bedding. There's a bed there. There's one back in here. You can see one there. Behind this beaten trail. Look at that historic road. That's crazy. I like hopped over and looked at that bed, hopped back onto the main trail. Followed it through here. It's a smaller rub. This trail is still just deep. Looks like that's rubbed a little bit, but it gets real thick in there. I just need to get to the outside of that transition. Alright, so that smaller rub was out there. I said I needed to get out to the transition. Ended up just deciding just to follow the trail in. That's rubbed up. That's the rub that I originally seen. It's right on this trail, and it opens up in here right out to the transition that I want to go to. This looks like there's a bed right here. Nice little circle. There's a decent rub. It's a little low, but it's right on the edge. Just overlooking this. Look at that. I'm just gonna mill around in this little edge here. So I was just walking around in this thicket, and that's the transition I was just walking where I found those good rubs, and you could tell where the bucks had been bedded, or just right on the inside of this transition. And if you look, this is like a perfect bowl right here. And we predominantly have a west wind. Right now it's blowing south, and I can feel the wind just wrapping around this. So anything that's going to be bedded on this transition, or even this transition, if the wind is opposite, the wind is just going to swirl here pretty much in any wind. It'd be hard to hunt them right here, which is why those beds and those rubs are here. I didn't hunt here all last season, and one of my first trips back here scouting for this off season, this is the first place that I went, and the sign was ridiculous. So we're gonna get a camera in here somewhere and figure out what the best stand location is. Look at these rocks. That one. No bunny. Alright, got my camera. You might be able to see it out there. I don't want to give it too much away, but it's watching this. It's either an entrance or an exit of this bedding area. I'm sure it's both. Just came walking through here, got out to this little opening that's just essentially the other side of this bedding area that leads out, and there is a tore up scrape right here. Deer track right there, leading out to the swamp. I'm gonna make my way to a point that I found last season and get a camera on that. I actually didn't necessarily avoid, but I didn't go through any of this year. Main beaten trail that runs right down the center of this. Decent rubs. There's a really good one back there. For him to be in there making that big rub, he's got to be laying down in there. There's really nothing else for him other than cover there. And I'm only like 100 yards away from where Dylan kicked up my target buck, and that rub looks like one that he could make. I'm gonna keep working down this point. It goes exactly where I want it to anyway. I'm on the very tip of this point, but no bucks on. No sign that shows me they're spending a lot of time here anyway. I know this little small patch right here has an annual scrape. It's there every season. It gets worked pretty good. My target buck hits that pretty much every year so far. If I can't find anything throughout these little pockets that I'm going to check quick, I'm probably going to just throw probably just a regular camera on that, just because I know most of the deer that hit that are at nighttime. Let's see, I'm going to hit this small patch right here. See if there's any signs of hitting in there, anything mature in general. Could just be hanging out right on this little island. Alright, so I came in this way. It's a pretty beaten trail right here. It leads into this. Looks like it's a bed right here. Right at the base of that tree. Could be another one here. This is all rubbed up right here. This looks like a smaller bed. It's an older rub. No mature sign. No mature fresh sign and no mature old sign. Alright, so I just came walking off of this little island following that main trail. That trail leads down this way. There's a historic rub that follows that trail, but I want to check this point out. Because on each side of this is just swamp. Let's see if there's any sign on the tip of this thing. It's a good trail. That's an old historic on that. Trail here. Not seeing any buck sign though. Alright, so that's that trail. Comes through this way. There's the historic rub I was talking about. And then this way. This trail kind of curves this way. Until this has been hit in the past. All these little nick marks. There's a historic on that. That's rubbed up. It's like early season last year. It's a smaller one. Alright, so the trail I came in on is right in front of me. It kicked off, and that's where all those historic rubs were. I ended up working back around. There was a historic right here, a really little one. There's a beaten trail that leads out into the swamp right here. Comes through this way. Just looks like a spot where a big buck would be. There's an old historic right here. Oh, he can lay anywhere down in here. It's a wall. This is pretty worked up right here. There's deer hair everywhere right here. So this is bad. There's some historics right in it too. Huh. Oh, there's some older stuff historic as well. Oh, and here's a good one back here. Okay, here we go. Good rub. There's probably another bed right here. I'm sure I can find hair in if I look at. There's deer hair right here. That's good. And it's historic and it's fresh. Historic. 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 Let's get a camera up. Debated on putting that camera up right on top of the bed, but ended up finding the main beaten trail that went right into that point and put the camera right on that, where it kind of splits off as soon as they enter. About 50-60 yards that way is where I ended up putting my camera, and I followed the main trail that led out of there and brought me right into this opening here. And we're still following the edge of the swamp here. see if there's any mature sign of anything coming out of those bedding, out of that bedding, or the swamp over here. All right, so where I'm at now, you can see those oaks, the taller trees back there. That's where I was just standing. I followed the trail in that I came in on when I was hunting in here. When I was hunting, I set up in those trees. It was getting late, and I could tell this was like a natural point, so I just gave it a shot. While I was setting up in these little smaller trees, a younger buck came through here, stopped because he heard me, and then darted back into the bedding back there. I thought he was going to use the trail I came in on, but now that, you know, it's later into the season, you can see this is the main trail. So while I'm right here, I'm probably going to find a spot to set up a regular camera just to observe anything that comes off of this point and then hits this trail. Check it at the end of the season and then use that information for the following year. There's a trail that comes in this way, a trail that comes in this way, there's a trail that comes in this way that all meet up right here. Alright, last camera's up. Just overwatching this flat. That trail that I came in on, that I set that regular cameras on. It's probably like 50-60 yards that way. There is another trail that comes from bedding to this oak flat that's on the other side of this. So the next time I'm in here, I'll plan on putting probably just another regular on the other trail that comes off of it, because more than likely, if anything comes off of that other trail, it's going to walk by that cell camera. So the regular cameras are just to get the time frame down. I was just walking out this way. I was looking at the map. The point that I have my regular camera on is right here. My camera's probably like right here. So there's a trail that leads in from here and also leads out to that point. And it leads to this point right here, as well as my regular camera that was over here leads to a trail that comes off and heads to this point. So I was making my way and I found this beaten trail. I can't imagine something mature walking down this. Look at that. That goes right by my camera. My camera's right there. Okay. I think I scouted this. Look at this trail. So I followed that trail in and it just led me to a wall that there's no way I'm getting through or anything mature is getting through. But still, this transition will lead me right back down to the first island that I put a camera on. So I'm just gonna walk the transition. Might poke my head into this right here. So I've been walking this edge. Got to right here and I was like, man, this is open enough for something to walk in here. And just caught my eye. These are brow tine marks. Oh, look at this. Okay. Nice. It's decent. Look at that little hole in there. Absolutely. This is that little hole. There's a ton of deer hair in here. There is a rub, a really old one, right here. Oh, okay, there. I didn't see the other side. So yeah, that's been hit. That's last season, looks like. Okay, hopped back out on the transition, walked maybe 10 yards down. There's another trail that leads in here. It looks pretty open. Here's an old historic. Oh, it looks way more open. I need to get in there. Alright, just fought through to get to this. I walked out there, there's really no sign. So I'm following the trails that are in here. There's a really good rub right there. I don't see anything this way. That looks like it's slightly touched up, but nothing crazy. Look at this. got this little patch of oaks right in their bedding area. They can just get up, walk over here, feed, and walk back to where it's thick in here. Look at this. Holy moly. I need to get a cell camera in here. That's the big one I originally seen. Then these guys. There's a good one in here. There's a bed right here. That's why that's there. There's another good one up here. This looks like it's all the same guy. Yeah. That's good. There's the trail leading out. Okay. I can work with this. This is on both sides too. This is him coming and going. Coming into bed. Through here, snap that off, turned one, at some point went that way and rubbed. This is one of his beds right here. There's that. Rubs that were that back there on that are all shredded up. We already seen those. Oh man, there's more back here too. Oh, yeah. This is what we were looking for all the off season. Good amount of rubs in here, good size. Ain't no way. Ain't no way anybody gonna see him in here. He's probably just left alone completely. I gotta get back in here and at least get a regular camera in. But I think putting a cell camera right where those oaks were would be killer. How the heck would you hunt this deer? There's two trails that go in here. That's the one that I just came out on. The other one's about 15 yards down. That's the original one that I walked back into on. I'm trying to see if there's anything out here that I could see myself getting up into. It looks like he's just taking these trails. It's connecting to this main one right here. If I find his rubs up here, there's a good one there. Old historic. Smaller one here. I don't know. Followed that trail through this thicket. Really wasn't anything that looked like his, but it brings me out to a spot where I've sat those trees a couple of times. That sign back there looked more like, you know, early October, mid-October. Gotta get a camera back in here, that's for sure. All cameras are up. Only brought 4. Definitely gonna be back out here. The last thing I'm doing right now is, the last time I scouted in here, I hit this small little chunk that's kind of surrounded by cattails. It could be overlooked, and when I went in there, the sign was crazy shredded. And I never looked to see if there was anywhere for me to set up in there. So that's what I'm gonna do. So without showing too much of it, this is that trail that leads into this thicket.